Everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to get going here officially in 2 more minutes, but I see that there's some movement in the chat already, which is fantastic. So yes, we invite you to let us know where you're joining from. Feel free to share your name. It's always fun to see where people are coming in from around the world. So I see already we have someone from Qatar, Nigeria. So who else do we have out there? Please share where you're coming from. Lovely to see that we have some parents joining us today too. Welcome. Ghana, UAE, Hong Kong. I think I saw Turkey a little higher up. We are spanning the globe. This is very exciting. So keep it coming. We've got 1 more minute left. Hello, Dawn from Vietnam. One of my favorite places to travel, although I love it all. All right, so there'll probably be a few more people popping in the next little while, but in the interest of time, we're going to get going. So once again, welcome. My name is Jessica Morrow, and I am one of Carleton's International Admissions and Recruitment Officers. You've also kind of been introduced to my colleague, Sarah, who will be managing the chat for me today. So any questions that you have, feel free to pop them in there, and she'll do her best to share relevant links or answer your questions. But I will reserve some time at the end to do a live question and answer period as well. Okay, so just a couple of housekeeping reminders. Please refrain from sharing any personal information in the chat, like your student ID number, WhatsApp numbers, emails. This is being recorded, and obviously we have folks joining from around the world, so we want to protect that information. And I think that's it. We're going to hop in. So today I'm covering the topic of applying to Carleton University. So having looked at the registration list, I understand that we have some folks joining who have already submitted an application, which is great to hear, and others who haven't yet. So if you've already submitted your application, there might be some redundancies in this presentation, but you might learn more about what your next steps are and have some other additional questions answered. So please feel free to stick around, even if you've already applied. Okay. So some of the things that I will be covering today, you'll see on these 4 circles. So first, our application is entirely online, as most applications are these days, but I will talk about that. Something that is usually quite a big relief for most students applying to Canadian universities and to Carleton is that we do not have a requirement for most of our programs for a personal statement or essays, resumes, CVs, anything of that sort. Most programs are admitted exclusively on academic merit. Further to that, we do not require the SAT or other entrance exams. And then the fourth point that sometimes causes some confusions, especially if you're applying as a high school student or you have other in-progress courses, is that we encourage you to apply sooner rather than later. You should not be waiting until after you get your final results to apply, but we have processes to evaluate you on your in-progress grades, and I will talk a little bit about that as well. Okay. So moving forward, this slide is to really just demonstrate the simplicity of the application. So as mentioned, you do apply online, and I'll talk about the 2 different avenues there. And that online application is very straightforward, maybe shockingly so. You're going to be asked very simple questions like your name, your birthday, your citizenship, country of residence, the high school you attended. So really nothing very complicated, all questions that you should be able to answer in your sleep. So it really shouldn't take you, more than 15 or 20 minutes, depending on, how focused you are. So very simple application there. The next step will be to upload documents. So this will happen after you submit your application. We process things on the back end, and within a day or two, you'll be invited to upload your documents. So I'll talk a little bit about that portal, but essentially we're going to generate a checklist for you indicating everything we need. This will usually include a transcript, perhaps proof of English language proficiency. Okay, so uploading documents. And then within the Carleton 360 portal, so that's your application portal at Carleton, that's where you can monitor your application throughout the evaluation process as it sits with Carleton. So perhaps we might look at your transcripts and say, oh, we need something extra. We would add it to your checklist, and then you would see, oh, they've asked for something else. Okay, so that's where you can see if we ask for additional documentation, or where you'll see a decision, and then you'll know what your next steps are. Okay, so very simple, really nothing too complicated there. All right, so now the actual nitty-gritty of how to apply. So we have two avenues for students to submit an application. So the first being the OUAC, the Ontario University's Application Center. So this would be if you are, actually the next slide will talk about how you would decide whether you're applying directly through Carleton or through the OUAC. But essentially with the OUAC, it's a fee of $166 plus some supplementary fees depending on how many and which universities you're applying for. But that fee will get you an application to 3 universities in the province of Ontario. Okay, so if you are looking at more than just one school in Ontario, then the OUAC is the better option versus our direct application, which can be found at 360.carleton.ca. This is a flat $100 fee application, Canadian dollars. Here you can select up to 2 programs at Carleton University. And this is really recommended if you are applying, again, just to Carleton. You've got a very clear understanding of the school you want, and it's us. That would be the best option. Okay, so there are some cases where the choice is kind of made for you. If you are a Canadian citizen who is studying internationally, then you must apply through the OUAC. All right. A second option would be that if you are an international student, but you are studying the Ontario Secondary School Diploma, the OSSD, then you must also still apply through the OUAC. As previously mentioned, if you're applying to multiple universities in Ontario, you would apply through the OUAC. It's just a little bit more streamlined, simpler for you to have that all managed through one application rather than multiple direct applications to a university. And specifically program-wise, if you are applying to our nursing program, that is managed through the OUAC. All right. So if you don't meet any of that criteria that I just mentioned, then you would apply through Carleton's direct application. Okay. So hopefully that's clear how to choose which one it makes the most sense for you. Okay, but even before you submit an application, you have to do the research to know whether you are even eligible. Have you met the requirements for the program that you hope to apply for? So in terms of requirements, as mentioned, for most of our programs, it is exclusively based on academic merit. So we're going to be looking usually at your final year of high school, the GPA, for that. Now, it could be a different selection of courses depending on the prerequisite requirements. depending on the courses that we will consider as academic versus non-academic. So we do that evaluation when we look at your application. But another important element of being eligible are those prerequisites. So it's really important, if maybe we have a few students here who aren't in their senior year yet, to do the research as early as possible to make sure that you're taking the correct courses. So for example, if you're looking at a Bachelor of Science or Health Science, we're going to be looking for math in your senior year and two sciences, so biology, chemistry, or physics. If you are looking at computer science, we will be looking for math. Engineering, we're looking for math, physics, and chemistry. Okay, so you can see the importance of making sure that you're taking the correct classes. Now, we do have this really handy tool on our website. When you search the programs, as you're researching what interests you, what programs jump out for you, then you click into the program and you'll see this really handy tool that you see on the slide here. So you'll select your educational background, and we've highlighted some of the more common ones that we see. So you'll see, IB, A levels, CBSE, WAEC. So you can select your curriculum. If you don't see yours there, no worries. There is other international curriculum. And then you select your program of interest, and then beep, boop, boop, it's going to populate for you. These are the requirements in your curriculum. Okay, so really, really helpful. Actually, if you take a pause now just to scan that QR code, it'll take you to our program page and you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that there for 1 second. And I see we have a hand up, but I am going to feel free to ask your question live in the chat where I have Sarah answering some questions. But otherwise, I'm going to take live Q&A at the end. Okay, so hopefully you can store your question there. All right, so one of the other requirements, aside from the academic requirements, is English language proficiency. So if English isn't your first language, it's not the language you speak at home, it's not the language you speak with your friends, your first language, then we might be requesting proof of English language proficiency. So this can happen in a few ways. If you have studied 3 years in an English medium school, then we will consider your English language proficiency met. There are some criteria within that, and some exceptions to every rule, of course, but that is something that we would take into consideration. Otherwise, we would be looking for an English language test. So that could be the IELTS, of course, which is one of the most popular. That would be a 6.5 with no section below 6. We accept TOEFL with a score of 86, with at least a 22 in writing and speaking and a 20 in reading and listening. But we also are taking other tests, as you can see there. So we're taking Duolingo now, PTE, Cambridge, Kale. So if you have any questions about English proficiency, if you scan that QR code, then that will take you to our English language proficiency webpage. Now, if some of you are maybe not as confident in your English language skills, we do have some alternative options as well. So if you meet the academic requirements for your program, and this isn't applied to all programs, but to many programs, if you meet the academic requirements, you might be considered for admission with a condition on taking English classes. Okay, so basically what that means is we send your English language results away for evaluation. And if you, depending on where you were graded, we would place you in an English class in your first year. So that could range from 3 hours a week to 12 hours a week, depending on how much English support you need. And you would be taking in tandem some academic classes as well. Okay, but also something to note, especially if you're just very close to the criteria, then if we admit you with the English language condition, you are welcome to rewrite your English test as many times as you want or want to pay for and resubmit your results. So if By the time you are starting your classes, prior to that, you resubmit an English language test that meet the criteria, then we can waive that English condition. Okay? All right. Now let's talk about documents. So I've teased the idea of documents a little bit because, of course, as mentioned, that first application is very basic. It's biographical, demographic information. You haven't told us even what classes you're taking at that point. We learn all of that with your documents. Okay? So I want to clarify that we evaluate students based on your highest level of education. So if we have any students here who are studying in post-secondary, so meaning a college or a university, then you would be evaluated based on your CGPA of your post-secondary studies. If you were in high school, then we'd be looking at your high school results. So as mentioned, once you submit your application, whether it be through the direct application or OUAC, there'll be some processing in the background for us to generate your profile, and then you'll be invited to upload your documents. So we do indicate to you what we are looking for. Now, this might be different depending on what curriculum you're studying, but if you are, so listen carefully, if you are hoping to meet English proficiency based on 3 years of academic studies, then you'll need to submit to us 10, 11, and 12. So 3 years of transcripts so that we can see that you have consistently been studying at an English medium school and we can make that evaluation. Otherwise, if you're not, then you might just be asked for your senior level results. So if you are in a CBSE school, for example, in an Indian curriculum, that might look like your mock exams or your pre-boards or your mid-year, term one, depending on your school situation. For other schools, if you are in A-levels or IB, we could use your predicted results in your final year. So there's lots of different formulas. I can't go into each, but just look carefully at what we are asking for, okay? And then if English language proficiency, yes, you'll upload that. And if there's anything else we're asking for, just pay attention to what we're asking for and get it to us as quickly as possible. Because if there is a document missing, your application is labeled as incomplete and we can't evaluate it at that point. So even if we have academic transcripts but no IELTS test, then we can't make an evaluation on your application. And then similarly for post-secondary studies, if you are at a college or university, you may want to upload your high school transcript because perhaps we'll have to look back to that for some prerequisites. But we will, like I said, be making a decision based on your in-progress grades or final grades in your post-secondary. And I guess it's also worth saying to take note of what we're not requesting. So, no need to send in all of your letters of reference and recommendation and certificates of all sorts, because that will not enter into what we consider when we admit. Okay, although well done, keep doing what you're doing. We don't want to discourage extracurriculars. There will be value for those when we talk about scholarships, which I will talk about. And of course, it just makes you a stronger and more capable student. So don't give up on your extracurriculars. All right, deadlines. So some of you have already come in early, which is great, but do note that the deadline for most of our programs is April 1st. So you do have lots of time, but we encourage international students to apply as soon as possible. And the main reason for that is that, it gives us time to process your application, give you a decision to start applying for your study permit. Processing time for the study permit can be a little bit unpredictable, so it's good to give yourself a lot of time. So April 1st, though, is the deadline. For most programs, we do rolling offers. So essentially, as soon as you get in your application and it's marked complete, then it enters our queue and we work through that queue and do evaluations. So we're not waiting until a hard date after the April 1st deadline to do evaluation. So the sooner you apply, the sooner that you will get a decision. However, you will see a list of programs here that we don't do rolling decisions on. So these will often have earlier deadlines. So nursing is actually mid-February. Most of the others are March 1st. And these are kind of specialized programs in that they do have something as part of the application in addition to academic merit. Okay, so a supplemental application. So for example, for architectural studies, we would be looking for a portfolio and some short writing assignments. Similar for industrial design and the information technology IMD program. For music, there's going to be a video audition that you'd have to submit. So if you are looking at one of those programs listed there, just be very aware of the additional requirements and the earlier deadline. All right, so now let's shift and talk about scholarships. So for those of you who aren't aware yet, we are very proud to have two options of scholarships or two opportunities for scholarships for our international applicants. So this one here that's on the screen is our automatic guaranteed entrance scholarship, which means that you'll be evaluated for this scholarship automatically as part of your application to your program. There's no additional application. So we do a conversion of your GPA in our system. So with the equivalent of 80%, you would be guaranteed a scholarship of $1,000, which is renewable every year if you maintain a certain academic standard for a total of $4,000. If you're in the range of 95 to 100%, then that increases to $4,000 a year, guaranteed up to 4 years, again, if you maintain a certain academic average, okay? Now, the other type of scholarship is our competitive scholarship, which does require an application. So if you are a high achieving student in the range of 90% or higher, and as we talked about before, have strong involvement in your school community through extracurriculars, leadership activities, volunteering, then you might be a good candidate to apply for our Prestige Scholarship, which is worth slightly more money than our guaranteed scholarships. The application is March 1st. So again, there is a bit of work that goes into this application, but if you are successful, it'll be well worth the time that you put into applying. So those are the two types of scholarships. Hopefully that's clear. Now let's talk about the timeline. All right, so when we offer a student admission to the university, we are going to outline for them what program they've been made an offer for. We're going to talk about residence and that automatic scholarship. So before I move through this slide, there's two things I want to highlight here. If you're unaware, Carleton does have guaranteed residence for students who are coming directly from high school. So if you're a high school graduate and you've completed no other post-secondary studies yet, then you will be guaranteed a spot in residence. And that also reminds me, for scholarships, those are also only available to students who are applying directly from high school, okay? Now, in terms of the program, you might be thinking, well, I know what program I applied for, but you might be in a situation where you get an alternate offer. So when you apply to your program, you can indicate a second choice, okay? We will only make you an offer for one, but we will evaluate your eligibility for the other. But that other program is important because if we find that you are not eligible for your first choice program, then we will automatically evaluate you for your second choice and make an offer if you are eligible. If you aren't eligible for either of them, or you didn't indicate a second choice, we will always, in most cases, I should say, evaluate you for an alternate offer. So for example, if you've applied to a program and you don't have the prerequisite but you have a very high academic average, then we might make you an alternate offer to a program that you are eligible for. And then it'll be up to you to decide if you want to pursue that alternate option, or you can come back to us and say, I understand why I wasn't admitted to my first choice, but instead of what you've offered me, I'd like to be considered for something else. So it can be a dialogue in that way. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say about that red bar there. Now, moving through for the timeline here. So the deadline will be April 1st, although rolling offers, so you might get your offer well before April if you've applied early. Once you receive your offer of admission, then the process is for you to accept that offer of admission by paying our acceptance deposit. Okay, so you accept by paying the acceptance deposit. That will then prompt us to issue you your provincial attestation letter. Okay, the PAL, which has been talked a lot about in the last year. So you will use both your PAL and your offer of admission as two of the required documents to apply for your study permit, in addition to all of the other requirements for your study permit, but that's a different webinar. All right, so once you have your PAL, you've accepted your offer, you've celebrated with the family, then the next step will be residence. So in the letter, if you were eligible for guaranteed residence, it would have been indicated. But even if you're guaranteed, there still is a step of formally accepting that room. And if you weren't eligible for a guaranteed spot, then you will be invited, I believe it opens up in May, to actually submit an application to live in residence. And then you'll go through the lottery pool to see if you are awarded a spot. Okay, so residence. Then the next big thing is to register for classes in July. So through the summer, we start running, or through the Office of the Registrar and our undergraduate recruitment office, registration webinars. So there are supports there to help you walk through the process of how to register, tips and tricks on choosing your classes. So that will happen in July. Now, tuition will be due August 25th. However, you may choose to pay tuition or part of your tuition prior to that. That's no trouble. And many international students do as a way to strengthen their study permit application. But I don't want to get too far into the weeds there. And then in summer two, you'll be invited to our iStart orientation program, which is facilitated by our Office of International Student Services. And that's just a virtual online workshop to take you through modules to get you ready to move to Canada. All right, so that's the timeline in kind of a simplified format. And of course, kind of all along the bottom there, you can see you are working to get your study permit application ready, submitted, and then checking in and monitoring the progress of that. I should also mention there is a deadline to accept your offer. The typical deadline is May 1st, but it will be indicated in your letter. So you'll read your letter very carefully, and then you'll read it again and take note of all those important next step deadlines. One, which will be May 1st to accept your offer of admission. If you have a late offer of admission, then that date might be after May 1st. But read your letter, it'll be clear there. So just to clarify for you of what you can expect in an offer of admission, assuming you get an offer and not a refusal, but we're being optimistic here today. All right, so in the offer, as mentioned, it will clarify for you if you were awarded a scholarship and how much. It will clarify for you if you have been offered a guaranteed spot in residence and the steps to watch out for that. You will be provided your study information for a study permit document. So that will be the document you use to support your study permit application. And then in the letter, there will be lots of other links and instructions to help you through the process. Okay, so it's a very informative package. So just to give you an idea of what it looks like, so there's two types of letters you might see. The first one is a conditional offer. Most of you will probably get a conditional offer. Now, remember when I said at the beginning of this presentation that that you'll be applying probably with in-progress grades, okay? So in-progress grades meaning you haven't graduated yet. So we're making a decision based on how you've done so far. So maybe with your predicted grades or your term one results, depending on your curriculum. So in this case, we have a cutoff that's been predetermined. So we look to see if you've met that cutoff. If you have, and you have all the prerequisite courses, we would say, okay, congratulations, you've been admitted on the condition that you retain a certain average upon graduation. So even though you have this conditional offer, you still have to do well and you still have to graduate. It is not the time to be slacking off or, moving to the Caribbean islands. You still have to do the work, all right? You won't be given a new offer of admission. Basically on your file, which you'll see through Carleton 360, there will be a hold that we're looking for your final grades, and we'll just remove that hold. But what is important to know, and please listen carefully, a conditional offer allows you to still apply for your study permit. You do not need to wait for a final offer or for your own graduation. You can apply with a conditional offer, and please do. Again, earlier is better when it comes to your study permit. All right? Now, if you are a student who's already graduated, perhaps you're on a gap year, so you graduated a year or two ago, but you haven't done any other studies, then we've made a decision based on final grades, which means we are putting no condition on your offer. It is final. You don't have to do anything else. Then your letter will be final, and there will be no hold in your Carleton 360 application. All right, and no additional documents. So just going back to the conditional offer on the topic of documents, is that we will be asking for your final results. Now, usually final results need to be official, and this means it has to be sent directly from your school or exam body, governing body, directly to us. That can be sent electronically to international@carleton.ca. If your school still does the old-fashioned mail, then that's okay too. All of that information is on our website, but we will be looking for your final results. Whereas with the final offer, we are not. Okay. So that is really it. I hope that I have been able to calm some nerves and demonstrate for you that the application process is quite straightforward, fairly easy. The hard part is doing well in your academic classes. We don't want to make it any more challenging for you. But to help you even more, there will be a follow-up to all the students who registered for this webinar. And we're going to share some resources with you. Perhaps it's already been dropped a couple of times in the chat. I haven't been monitoring, but we have a really robust how to apply page on our international admissions website. And we have videos walking you through the direct application step by step, page by page, so you can see it live. We have lots of other FAQ, frequently asked questions, in there as well. And then, of course, we are resources. Myself and the recruitment team are resources as well. So you are always welcome to book a one-on-one virtual meeting with us. And I'm sure that link has and is being shared. We have also really fantastic student ambassadors who are international students from a broad range of programs coming from countries around the world. They may not be in a position to walk you through the application, but if you have other questions about, do I want to apply to Carleton? What is it like to study in Ottawa? Do I think I can manage the cold winters? They are a fantastic resource for you as well, and they're available through our TAP system, which is also linked on our international website. And we're doing lots of fun stuff in that space. So if you do apply and get an offer of admission, then you'll be invited to do a lot of fun stuff in that space, like I said. So taking part in communities and live streams. So watch out for that. We're very excited to be able to offer that opportunity. Okay, so I am seeing a 99 plus number in my chat. So wow, you guys have been busy. So, Sarah, I'm going to ask if you are not too busy typing away, are there any reoccurring questions that maybe I should speak to out loud if you want to unmute yourself and just share with me? I might have caught Sarah off guard. I'm sure she's working.
You did. Hi, Jeff. Okay, so maybe there was some questions about the IB conversion when you showed the table. So maybe you want to go
Mm,
back to that slide. And there's a lot of questions about the English language test. So yeah.
okay, sure. So let me share again. Um, so I'm back on the scholarship page. So remember that I said we do a conversion for most curriculums to make them kind of equivalent to the Canadian or Carleton percentages. So what you're seeing here is how an A level or an IB result would convert to Carleton's percentage grades. So this would be both for how we would evaluate for academic merit, but then also for scholarship. So I don't know if that needs any more clarification, but kind of unrelated to that, something I didn't mention as we're on the topic of IB and A levels, and this would apply too for CAPE, if we do have anyone from the Caribbean, and AP, is that if you are hitting a certain academic grade in your courses, so whether it be your A level or your higher level IB or 2 units of CAPE, etc., you will be also evaluated for transfer credit or advanced standing. So that's something that we also do as part of the evaluation of your application. So we would be applying your transfer credit. So for example, if you are doing a higher level biology, um, then you would be evaluated for 2 first-year biology classes at university at Carleton. So essentially saying that it's an equivalent course. Okay, so that is done automatically too when you apply. There's no additional work that has to be done there. If we do have transfer students here in the presentation, then that doesn't happen automatically. You would be invited to submit your course descriptions or syllabi from your post-secondary institution. And then that is something that we would evaluate at that point. Okay, so I don't want to go too much into that, but if you have questions, then perhaps a follow-up email or a one-on-one would be best. Now, for the other question was English proficiency. So let me go back to that. So I'm not sure exactly what the clarification needed is, but I'm sure Saras shared the English language proficiency website. And it's all laid out pretty clearly there. So what the requirements are in order to have your English proficiency met, and meaning that you don't have to submit anything else or do any extra English classes. But maybe the confusion is if you are slightly lower. So on the website, it'll indicate if you are at a 6 in your IELTS or a 5.5 or a 5, what the requirement for English would be. So I know a lot of schools would say, okay, you have to go to the English Language Center or English schooling prior to starting your academic classes. Carleton does it a bit differently, where you're going to do your English classes in tandem with your academic classes, so that you are getting a start on your program while bolstering your English. So if you need any more clarification, please read the website carefully and then follow up with any questions you have for us.
Jess.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of questions about transfer students and
Yeah.
scholarships. So maybe you want to clarify that as well.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. An important point. So basically, the scholarships that I spoke about, entrance scholarships, are only available to students who are coming from high school. So either you are graduating this year or you've graduated, but you've had no other post-secondary studies, okay? Once you have started at a college or university, you no longer qualify for our entrance scholarships, unfortunately. We do have scholarships, which we call in-course scholarships. So these are for all students, including transfer students. Once you are a student at Carleton, you would be considered for scholarships based on your academic achievement as a Carleton student. Okay, so there's a new world of scholarships that open up once you are studying at Carleton, but the entrance scholarships are only reserved for high school graduates. Okay, so hopefully that is clear. Um, Anything else worth commenting on, Sarah?
I think that's mainly the themes of the questions.
Okay. Um, I will watch the chat here for another second if there's anything else that people want to ask. Otherwise, um, oh, actually, I see a question there about a minor, and that's a good question. So on your application, you will be able to indicate, in most cases, a minor as well. So you can indicate your first choice, your second choice, and if you want to add a minor. So we can add that to your offer as well. However, do not feel the pressure to have to choose a minor now. That can be added in your first or second year of studying at Carleton. But if you have the clarity of the minor now, you can do that. Now, you can't only have a minor, you do have to be applying in to a degree program. So you do have to indicate, although she is a minor, sorry. But this did spark, it's a good question about minors too, because I didn't speak about it. So you will be invited to indicate a minor as well. In terms of age, it's a good question. We don't have any age requirements, whether it be, as a minor or a person who's 110 years old. It doesn't matter how old you are in order to be eligible for Carleton. Some of the trickiness may come when applying for your study permit. So if you are of a certain age, 18 will likely be fine, where you won't need a custodian. However, if you are much younger, then there might be some additional requirements in terms of being invited into Canada on your study permit and the requirement for a custodian. But otherwise, no concerns there. So I'll just emphasize again, seeing one of the most recent questions about timing. So rolling offers for most programs. So if you're applying to engineering, computer science, bachelor's of math, bachelor's of arts, bachelor's of science, those are rolling offers. So once you submit your application, and it's complete, you immediately go into the queue. So you could get a decision, shortly after that, depending on our capacity in that time, within weeks, you could be getting a decision. Unless you were applying to one of those specialized programs that I highlighted, then those decisions aren't happening until late spring, okay? Just having a little looky-loo here. Oh, yeah, there might be students in the chat who are permanent residents or Canadians studying outside of Canada. So important to note that the application process itself is the same, whether you are a Canadian or an international student or a permanent resident. You may answer the question slightly different, but the application is the same. What changes is how you are categorized in the back end of the system, and that will affect the tuition that you are charged, which is kind of one of the bigger differences. However, the application is the same. Something that I'll highlight though, that if you are a Canadian or a permanent resident who has lived outside of Canada most, maybe all of your life, you may not get all of the um, same emails or invitations to events from our International Student Services office. Um, so if you feel like you want to be part of all of the same international orientation because you really feel like you need that additional level of transitioning to living in Canada, then send us a message, highlight that for us, and we can just double check that you're on those lists, okay? Because just being Canadian doesn't mean, if you haven't lived here for decades or more, that you know what you're doing. Okay, great question here from Joshua about supports. I'd love to touch on that. There are countless supports. In fact, I could give another whole 1 hour presentation on the supports, but specifically for international students. So I alluded to our Office of International Student Services. So we shorten that to the ISSO, International Student Services Office, and they are a fantastic resource for international students. So you'll see in the next couple of months, you'll likely get invitations from their office as they start running Ask Us Anything or kind of study permit webinars as you're getting ready to apply for your study permit. So they're a great resource in terms of supporting that process. So definitely watch out for those. And if you do have questions, then you can email them directly about that. So really great resource for the study permit process. And then you will get an invitation to take part in their iStart program, as I mentioned, which is something that they facilitate as well. When you arrive on campus, they run an international student welcome. So, kind of they have the in-depth knowledge of kind of what the students need in their first week in order to set them up for success. So that's done in addition to the campus-wide orientation and welcome. And then they're a resource throughout the year for any questions, concerns that you have. They help facilitate things like, conversation cafes, mentorship. So huge, huge resource run through our ISSO. Now, there's other really important services that are available to all students, and international students take part as much as anyone else in the areas of academic supports. So sometimes this is centralized, where you have access to tutors and mentors and workshops for some of those more challenging programs. Lots of different programs or faculties will have their own sessions. So whether it's through the Science Student Success Center, for example, so academic supports in there. You have your academic advisors when it comes to choosing your programs, being strategic with your electives and your minors. So that's on the academic side. And then something else that I want to highlight is that Carleton has a huge, huge emphasis on taking care of our students. So not just academically, but also in terms of their social lives and their mental health. So one of the ways that we demonstrate that is that we offer free mental health counseling for all of our students. So that's something that you don't pay extra for. It's covered under your tuition fees. We have really great programs like our therapy dogs who hold regular, listen carefully, office hours. So if that's something that you find will help you de-stress and relax, and then sessions all year round that focus on things like financial health, meditation, managing stress through exams. Again, I can go on. And then the supports that exist in residence too, in terms of safety, security, 24-hour campus security. So all this to say, to sum it up, I think you'll feel well supported. All right, I'm gonna grab a couple of more and then we will wrap it up. WES validation is not required. If you have already undertaken one, you are welcome to send it along, but we do verify on our own. Um, Let me see. Okay. Although not the topic of conversation here, I did see a question about work, so happy to touch on that. If you are an international student who will be coming to Canada on a study permit, then there may be a condition on your study permit that will allow you to work. Typically, there is. What that condition does is allow you to work 24 hours a week off campus. Now, off-campus jobs, that would be part-time. It could be in a coffee shop, a movie theater, a shoe store, working reception somewhere at an office. Really, whatever you are hired to do and want to do for 24 hours a week. You would be eligible to work unlimited hours on campus. So on campus, we have a number of jobs in the bookstore, the library, faculties hire, our office hires students to help us, as I mentioned, our student ambassadors, tour guides, things like that. Um, and then in the summers or any other scheduled breaks, so over our holiday break or reading week, your off-campus hours, those 24 hours, can go full-time. So you can supplement and increase your hours to full-time hours, which is usually anywhere between 35 and 44 hours a week. Now, again, this is a whole other presentation. Hopefully most of you are familiar with co-op. That's something else that usually doesn't start until the summer of your second year, but that's an opportunity to be working in a field related to what you are studying while being paid a salary to do that. And we have a new, very exciting program called ISEP. Let me see if I can remember the acronym. International ISEP student. Oh, someone in the chat's going to have to help me out. I'm
Are we talking
not
about
working through my
the
coffee.
international's employment program for students?
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Okay.
International Student Employment
Yes.
Program, which is being run through our Co-op and Career Services office, which we are empowering employers, both at Carleton and outside of Carleton, to hire international students only. So you are not competing with any domestic students to work usually about 10 hours a week paid to just gain some part-time experience. And it's usually something a little bit more elevated than, say, working in retail or hospitality. So getting some really valuable work experience. But in addition to that, it's not just about the work. It's the lead up to the work that's maybe as valuable, where you're taking part in online workshops, which will teach you about or prepare you to work in the Canadian context. So preparing a resume, your interview skills, how to conduct yourself in a workplace in the Canadian context. And then that hopefully will just set you up for more success in your work life, both as a student and upon graduation. Um, okay, there are so many questions and we're not going to be able to I'm not going to be able to get to them all orally. I know that my colleagues are feverishly typing away, but if you didn't get your question answered, please, 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 please follow up with an email to either international@carleton.ca or book a one-on-one virtual meeting with, there's me, there's Sarah, who's in the chat. We have two other colleagues, Leah and Andy, who would love to help. So please book a meeting. It might be the best way to have your specific questions answered. We're also very happy to meet with parents. So bring your parents along, let them ask the tough questions. We're ready for it. It's always good to connect with parents as well. All right, again, I know there's so much we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about co-op or housing, costs, but today I really wanted to get through the application process and kind of demystify that for you. So I see Nadi's just included the link to book a one-on-one virtual meeting with us. So please go ahead and do that. All right, we've got a couple more minutes for those of you who have stuck around. Let me see if I can find a question that would be a goodie. Um, Sorry, everyone, bear with me for a second as I scroll through all these fantastic questions. Ah. Okay. I see some questions about co-op. So I'm tempted to spend our last couple of minutes talking about co-op, which was not on the agenda for today, but it is a really important topic, and there's lots of information online. So I encourage you to do some more research on that. But for those of you who have not been introduced to co-op yet, co-op is very similar to an internship, but it's kind of a made in Canada program. So it is like an internship, as mentioned, but even more embedded in the program. Okay. So usually in the summer of your second year, you would start working. And then from there, you can work up to 16 months. Many students do it as a rotation, like work, study, work, study. It could look like work, study, study, work. There's different formulas, but that's not something you need to worry about now. What's important to know is that when you are working, it's full time. You're not taking classes, you're not paying tuition, you are working and earning a salary. The intention of this is that you are gaining work experience related to what you are studying. So prior to your first co-op, in that second year, you would enroll in a course called Co-op 1000, where kind of like the ISEP, we're teaching you how to have a productive job interview, how to write a resume, job search strategies. And then you'll use all of those skills to apply for jobs. So we don't place you, we support you in applying to jobs. So you might apply for a job, not be successful. We help you edit your resume and you try again. All right. Now, in terms of where do you find those jobs, we have a great host of staff working in the co-op office who work within different industries, who are networking on your behalf, and they are putting those jobs into a portal where you can search and filter based on your interests and see the available jobs and apply. Or you can tap into your own network and say, okay, my uncle has an office in this city and I would like to work for them. We would do the due diligence, see that it's safe, that they'll pay you, and support you in that. So benefits, very obvious. When you graduate, you could finish with already up to 16 months of work experience before you've even graduated. So making you a much better candidate for professional jobs. You are meeting mentors and references, and you're also doing kind of a test drive of careers. What do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to pursue after graduation? So that's all I'll say about co-op. It's kind of a teaser and to get you excited. It's available in most programs, but that element of experiential learning, hands-on learning, is really, really foundational to all of our programs here at Carleton. So if not co-op, it might present itself as a practicum or field schools, but we like to get our students to get our hands dirty here. Okay, so I think this is a good time to wrap it up. Again, please book a one-on-one, follow up with an email if we didn't get to your question today. I apologize for that, but I think the folks in the chat did a fantastic job. So thank you. I see my colleague Dahlia also hopped in. So thank you to Dahlia and Sarah and to all of you for joining. I really do appreciate it. I hope that you'll submit an application to Carleton. And if you already have, congratulations on taking that first step. And we look forward to hopefully welcoming you to Carleton in beautiful Ottawa, Canada in September.